YouTube, what is up? James, MTG Biggie here, and today I wanted to make a video that'll be kind of a first for this channel. I found myself with a little bit of spare time this evening and had an idea because a couple other YouTube creators who are much bigger than me and much more well known in the community than I am made videos that had the very same sentiment, I think, and were trying to send the same message. And the reason this is a new and different sort of video for me is I usually do not ever talk about MTG Finance on my channel. I don't talk about card prices. I don't talk about the reserved list. I don't talk about the fluctuation of the prices of the cardboard that we play. I don't talk about over reprinting or high print runs or anything of that sort generally, because I like to think of myself as more of a player of Magic. I mean, obviously, everybody who plays Magic collects Magic cards, but I don't focus first and foremost on the financial part of it. I tend to not buy and sell a ton of Magic cards all the time. I open packs for fun, because obviously there's always a ton of fun in opening packs and getting cards for decks that you want to play, or just opening a new set just to like bolster your collection of that set to have those cards to play in future decks or whatever the case may be. But today, the two creators I'm talking about put out videos that I thought were interesting. They were videos talking about the reserved list. Not only in support of the current reserved list we have, but also with the unique idea of expanding the reserved list to eliminate some of these reprints we've been seeing over and over and over again. And while I understand that line of thinking, I understand that from a financial aspect, if you're more a collector of the game than you are a player, or if you're more of a dealer, like a buy, sell, trade sort of person, than you are a player. Sorry, I hit my microphone. That may be something that you would either be for or at least more willing to consider that sort of notion. So the two YouTube creators I'm talking about are first and foremost Openboosters. This was the first video I watched today on YouTube, and he actually stepped in front of the camera, I think for like one of the first times ever on his channel, and made a video expressing how after standard rotations, if they were to take a couple select cards and add them to the reserved list with the promise of never printing them again, how it would be beneficial for the value of the cards and for the collectors, and guarantee that there is value to be made from playing standard and saving these cards after they rotate. The examples he used specifically were like Walking Ballista and Fatal Push, like the higher quality cards that see a fair amount of play all over the place. And it's an interesting thought, but logically I don't think that it is a very viable option for the people who play the game and for the folks that invest the most time and money into the new product market. Meaning that for the people that play the game and are buying booster packs and boxes and fat packs and product to play standard and to have a collection to use to trade cards, to gain cards that they want to play in standard and modern or whatever, I don't find this a viable option, because what this really benefits, and the folks that this benefits for, Wizards has already said that they don't really care specifically about the secondary market, which isn't completely true. They have to care about it to some extent, because without the secondary market, obviously the game craters, and if people don't care to buy the cards because of the value that they hold, the game can't live on. But I don't find it like a great option to put a card like Fatal Push on the reserved list, or put a card like Walking Ballista on the reserve list. I do think that Wizards needs to throttle back the reprints and just throttle back the amount of product they put out every single year. Obviously, you're going to have your new set every 3 months, which is fine. I don't think there should be a change to that. But all the supplemental and extra product, the multiple Masters reprint sets a year, the From the Vaults, the sets like Unstable or Conspiracy, or obviously the intro decks and dual decks, and all this sort of stuff has just become way too much, it feels like. So much so that like the quality of each one going down the line seems to get lesser and lesser, and the amount of care that people are able to invest into each of these products is less and less the more that there are, just because you can't keep up with it. My solution to it is hopefully at some point or another Wizards dials it back. They don't have to come out and set anything in stone that says they will or will not do this. The other video and the other creator, obviously, if we're talking about MTG Finance, it's going to be Rudy at Alpha Investments, who said that he had posted about expanding the reserve list, and according to the amount of likes to dislikes that his video got, and the amount of comments and whatever in his video, that most people seem to agree. And basically echoing almost exactly the same sort of thought or idea as Open Boosters. And here is part of why I disagree. I think that reprints are important, and I think keeping the market price down on a lot of big playable singles, for Modern especially, is important. I think they should maybe look at perhaps once a card is reprinted 2 or 3 times, maybe having a larger delay on it before ever reprinting it again. But sometimes the price of cards gets out of control. An example of a card that's been reprinted and still has a hefty price tag, which this isn't actually the real one. I have some real ones over here somewhere that I'm borrowing from a friend, but Tarmogoyf. In this case, Tarmogoat, the token from Star City Games. But Tarmogoyf was reprinted in the Modern Masters sets, in the first one in 2015, and I want to say in 2017. That card got a bunch of reprints, and it's still like a $60 or $70 card. So there's still value there, and I understand that the value dropped if you bought into that card when it was in the hundreds to $140 range. And for some people, that's upsetting, and that isn't ideal. But Tarmogoyf is one of those cards. Once you have your playset, if you're serious about playing Magic and you play any amount of Modern or Legacy, you're going to want to keep your set of Tarmogoyfs. So even if you bought them high, it's unfortunate that you had to spend a little more money on them, and they get reprinted and the price drops. Even if that happens to you, you still have your set of Tarmogoyfs. And the reprints allow the folks that weren't able to buy into Tarmogoyf to pick them up at a lower price to play the game. The more people that could get Tarmogoyf, the better for the state of Modern, for the state of Legacy, as it's widely played in that format as well. And the better it is, the more players we have. Especially a really fair card like Tarmogoyf. The other thing too, like Fetchlands is another one to look at. Without reprinting Fetchlands, new players trying to build a Modern deck, the bar would be set way too high. So if the cards all cost, an example from the like Khans fetch lands before they were reprinted in Khans, from what I've seen, like polluted deltas were up in the hundreds of dollar range. And when the bar is set so high where you can't have new players enter a format, your format is either going to really, really stall out and become less diverse, and the less people that play it, the harder it is to fire tournaments. The harder it is to fire tournaments, the less people show up. The less people show up, the less money that stores make. The less money that stores make, the less money and product Wizard sells, and the more harm our game is put in. At the end of the day, it's not about the investors, it's not about the collectors, it's about the players, as it is a collectible card game, but I think the emphasis falls too far away from the word game in that phrase. It is a game, and the players need the cards to play the game. Another reason reprints are kind of necessary, and I think a good thing from time to time, is I know at least personally when I play a standard format, and if it is a format that I like and I have a lot of fun with, and there's a deck or a card that I enjoy that I would like to play with more, but maybe it's not quite good enough for Modern or Legacy, I would like to have the opportunity to see that card pop up in Standard down the line again. A good example of this is something like Soulfire Grandmaster, which is a card that I loved playing in the like Khans of Tarkir era Standard, Fate Reforged Standard, and I think a really good, powerful card, but not quite powerful enough for Modern. So when I got this card in Standard, I got 4 of them, and I played a lot of Jeskai, and then that card and those sets rotated, and now I have 4 Soulfire Grandmasters sitting in my binder. Because I'm not into selling off cards that rotate out of Standard. I would rather hold on to it and hope that later on it becomes something I could use in Modern, or it becomes something that, again, can live and see its day in Standard. Obviously, this is not as common as a lot of other situations are, but the fact that because they didn't jam Soulfire onto this fictional reserved list, I have the ability to maybe play with those cards again. Obviously, Frontier is not going to become a major thing, so the ability to just hold those out for a rainy day and have the ability to maybe one day play with Soulfire Grandmaster or Mantis Rider again, although Mantis Rider is seeing some Modern play coincidentally. But the ability to know that like somewhere down the line these cards could show up again, or if a new set comes out where they're visiting an old plane that's been visited before, that they could reprint those cards later on. A lot of times they don't do that anyway. Like when they went back to Innistrad, they could have reprinted Geist of St. Traft. Instead, they gave us an enchantment that has an ability like Geist of St. Traft. Not nearly as good. I think they assume Geist of St. Traft's too good for Standard, which it may have been. But the possibility was there. Fatal Push is a card that when it leaves Standard, it's going to probably drop, and then probably over the next 3, 4, 5 years, it's going to get hiked way back up in price to the point where like something like Path to Exile was, where we're going to have to wait for a reprint for it to become a reasonable price, and that's for an uncommon. I don't want to see an uncommon that you have to play in your black decks in a format being like $15, $20, $30. Mishras Bauble was another one that really needed a reprint. It was a $40 uncommon because it hadn't been reprinted in 10 years. the reprint in Iconic Masters was a great idea and a great thing for the game and for the players. And I know that I'm a little biased on this sort of viewpoint because I'm a player that played a long time ago, and I owned all the Duallands, and I used to have Force of Wills and Duallands and Mana Drains, and I used to play Vintage. Although I didn't own Power, I had just about everything else but the Power, and I sold my cards like an idiot. Don't ever sell your collection. Unless you're in dire need of money to pay your bills and live your life, don't sell your collection. I can't stress that enough. But I sold my collection out, and I quit the game for like 12 years. And then I came back to the game, and the first thing I wanted to do was play older formats or have the cards that I used to own for nostalgia reasons. And I can't own those cards right now. Outside of like Force of Wills and now Mana Drains, which were reprinted. And maybe if I wanted to buy into those cards, I have a fair chance to without spending an ungodly amount of money on them. But the Duallands I may never own again. Or I may just have to buy them slowly over time if I'm going to build a specific legacy deck. Part of the reason I play Death and Taxes is because I didn't have to buy duels. Outside of that, the fact that I love the deck and I just happen to really, really like it a lot more than a lot of the other decks, the first, slight consideration I had was because I didn't have to buy Duallands, and while I did have to get Rashad Imports, Rashad Import is a card that I feel has a bit of flexibility and a little more play than, say, a Savannah, in Legacy at least. That being said, I'm glad I got into that deck because I love the deck, but that's a whole nother point. As a dude that sold off my collection, I feel like an idiot. I sold my duels and all my other stuff when Duallands were like $15 to $30, depending on the specific duel. The blue ones were more expensive as usual. Now the mana base for Legacy decks is in the thousands of dollars. So that's another reason, players like me who either sold out of their collection or are interested in a new format. And by new format, I mean an older format. If you get in the Magic and you play Standard and you're like, this is really fun, I want to take this to the next level and play more and have a wider variety of cards to choose from. Getting into Modern, if fetch lands are in the $30, $40, $50, $60, $80, $100 range, it's too much of a barrier. And it stifles growth in the game and in the community. I agree to dial it back a little bit. We don't need 2 or 3 master sets a year. We don't need all this product on top of product on top of product. And I agree that maybe once they reprint a card 2 or 3 times, a la Tarmogoyf, they dial it back a little bit. Maybe put a throttle on the amount of reprints that happen or the timeline of those reprints. But even those who complained when stuff like Karn was reprinted, look at Karn now. It's still $60. Noble Hierarch is still a $50 Magic card. Why? Because we haven't seen a reprint for a couple years. And if it does get reprinted again, it'll drop. It'll be a $20 card for a while. And then some people can buy in, and then some time will pass, and it'll go back up again. I'm not going to speak toward the print quality. I'm not going to speak toward the giant print runs, the amount of product, because I think that they should dial that back a little too. We don't need Iconic Masters in Walmart and shit, but other than that, I say let the reprints flow a little bit. Obviously, user discretion, Wizards. I know you do anyway. Even if right now it seems like you're not. Perhaps dial back the amount of product every year. And be smart about it. I don't support an expanded reserve list. The reserve list we have now is fine. It's unfortunate that I can't buy Gaia's Cradles so I could play Elves and Legacy. Or I can't, go buy myself a set of Volcanic Islands and a set of Underground Seas so I could play Grixis Delver. But I understand that part of it. As far as dumping standard cards into the reserve list and stifling the growth of Modern, I just don't see it. So Rudy, Open Boosters, while I respect and I see your side of the opinion, I gotta disagree with the both of you on this one, and I hope that's okay with you guys. I see where you're coming from, but I think the trading card game, the collectible card game, is a game. We have to maintain the community of that game, and if the community can't afford the cards, then the game will suffer. So that's all I've got on that, guys. I hope that some of you agree with me, and if not, let me know down below why you don't. That being said, if I find myself here tomorrow night with another topic I can speak about, maybe you'll see another video. Maybe we'll go 3 in a row. Beyond that, there will be a link over that side of the screen. Click my face, subscribe to this channel. You get signed up to see videos like this. I also do deck techs. I do discussion pieces about the community. I talk about pretty much everything Magic except for Finance until today. Either way, I'll talk to you guys again very soon.